Hey everybody, welcome to the Guitar Cast. I'm your host, Andy Keithley. Today we are talking with concert photographer Steph Port. I really enjoyed this conversation. Steph told me a lot about getting started in photography and gradually working her way into the live music scene in Los Angeles. She's photographed bands like Khruangbin, Thundercat, Phish, Jim James, Primus, Neil Young, lots of others. If you like this episode, please leave a review on your podcast app. Here's my conversation with Steph.
So my name is Steph Port. I'm a photographer in Los Angeles. I shoot a lot of music and concerts.
Yeah. What's your history with photography? Like, I imagine it was a hobby. Like most photographers kind of start out shooting a lot of pictures.
Yeah.
And then find a way to make some money at it and get into very cool situations where you're shooting great bands like you. So tell me about it.
Well, I guess I'll start back at like high school. I took some film photography classes in high school. My grandfather was a side hustle like wedding photographer and had a dark room in the basement. My dad grew up with that. He's a hobbyist, nature and outdoor photographer. So it's always sort of been around in my family, and that's what made me want to, take those classes in high school. After that, didn't really pick up a camera for maybe a decade or so. And I had this hand-me-down old DSLR that my dad had given me in the corner of my apartment. And decided one day, hey, I really, I want to try getting back into this. And at the time was like really inspired by some other music photographers that I was following and I knew about through some of the bands that I love, and just like, really prolific, amazing photographers that are out there, and, got back into it and had to teach myself a lot of what I had learned and forgotten in the past. And, asked some friends that I knew that were involved in like local music scenes if I could just take my camera to their shows and, get some experience under my belt, give them the photos for whatever they wanted, for marketing or anything, and started doing that. So I just like brought it out to some local bar shows and things like that, mostly like the west side of LA, and built a little portfolio. And from there, started reaching out to local LA, music coverage publications that I knew had photographers going out to shows, and sent some of my work to them. And someone over at LA Record was like, hey, yeah, we've got a spot. Your stuff looks great. Would love to start sending you out to shows like ASAP. So, that was, that opened up a whole world for me. Started shooting like real shows, real venues, big crowds. And I just did as much as I could. Because I just really wanted to just, get better and get more experience and learn. So that was a huge opportunity. And for a while, it was really just like this hobby. Like I didn't even call myself a photographer for like a year because I didn't think of myself as one. And it was just this, passion that I was following. Once like it became more of a, I'm starting to get asked to get hired and people want to pay me, and wow, like that started to shift my sort of perspective about all of it. And it just organically grew through, putting my work out there, but also like really kind people in my life that were willing to make connections for me and, help me get my foot in the door at certain places. And I wouldn't have been able to grow it if it wasn't for that help from other people too. So it sort of organically became this just hobby passion thing to an actual, profession.
Yeah. It's very similar to my experience with music, starting off just purely out of fun.
Yeah.
And then, not really calling myself a musician because it was sort of like, well, that seems like kind of presumptive and like, I'm not.
Yeah.
And then at some point, I had a band that was just kind of playing whatever, and then we started to get calls for weddings and for like to be hired.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I'm like, well, I guess this is what I do now, and just very organic. And we're in a city where like that can happen in a lot of different industries.
Yeah.
There's so many people. There's so many
true.
events. There's just like kind of an endless supply of just an enormous market for stuff like that. One thing that you mentioned about the dark room that I've always kind of wondered about, because I remember in high school, I didn't take photography, but I had some friends who did, and they would always be in the dark room. And you'd see it on like TV and stuff. But can you explain what the darkroom process is? And because I have no idea.
Yeah, sure. So, the darkroom is, it doesn't allow any light in that can harm the actual development and printing process. So the red light that's in there that you see in movies and stuff, that is, for people to be able to see, but it's not going to affect the actual processing of film and printing and things like that.
Right.
What happens in the darkroom is essentially, taking the film out of your camera, processing it with certain chemicals, which you can do outside the darkroom too, in certain low light situations, or they sell these bags. You can do it inside a bag that's, sealed for no light to enter it. But you can process the film in there, which basically means developing it with the usage of certain chemicals to get the actual image to come through on the film. And then from there, the process of enlarging and printing the images.
So how do you enlarge? A film frame is like very small.
Yeah. So it's there's these machine. I don't know if you call it a machine, but a tool called an enlarger. It's a pretty big piece of equipment that you basically, put your film on this little kind of slide holder, stick it into the enlarger. There's a magnifier that projects the image from the little, film negative down onto whatever paper you're printing that image on. And then in that process, you have creative abilities as well to affect the exposure and composition of the image too. So there's this, there's this thing called dodging and burning, which is essentially like controlling the amount of light and exposure that you want printed. So if something that you shot is maybe a little overexposed, or a skyline is a little too bright, you want to bring it down, you can use your hand and like certain things to affect the outcome of the image. So it's kind of like analog editing.
You can do like double exposure that way too, right? Where it's two images.
I suppose you could if you layer film on top of each other, but most double exposure is actually done in camera.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so again, I'm drawing parallels to the music side, and like all of this is now done digitally. Anybody can do these things on their iPhone.
Yeah. Everyone's a photographer.
Yeah. We're in a recording studio right now, and a lot of this gear that you see completely obsolete. It's
right.
All of this stuff I can do on my phone. I can do on my laptop. All these effects, all these. And kind of like using your hand or getting some very almost like primitive ways of affecting the end result. That used to be, there's stories of all like bands in the 60s doing completely odd, weird stuff to the tape machine, to the microphones, to get these effects, which again all became replicated digitally. Right. But you still shoot on film, right? Sometimes?
I do, yeah. Less so at shows, especially if I'm being hired and they want, deliverables the next day or that night. But that said, during the pandemic specifically, I really got more into film and, bought a really great camera that I love that I just used on walks and around my neighborhood, and started doing some more, kind of road trip style photography, street stuff, architecture, anything that just caught my eye that I thought was visually interesting and spoke to me. Got really into film again. And I think that it actually had a pretty positive effect on my work now too, just digitally, like reconnecting with the actual fundamentals of photography has helped me, I think, hone my eye and my exposure, all the like scientific things for the better. So that's been a really unexpected effect of that.
Yeah. Well, it helps if you're going to be using these effects digitally. It helps to at least know or have experience with the analog parallel of where it came from.
Yes.
Because somebody like me who has no idea about these things, if I'm editing a picture on my phone, I'm just kind of messing around and seeing what looks cool. And it's
Totally.
Sometimes that it ends up in a cool picture. Sometimes it's like, what are we doing here?
Right. Right. You have to just reset, go back to the beginning.
Yeah. But if I had known why contrast is contrast or why brightness, I mean, I've very little experience, but in music, it's the same thing. If you know what a compressor does, an actual compressor piece of gear, then you go to that plug-in on a computer and you have more of a working knowledge of the actual function of the thing. Yeah. And it helps round out your kind of artistic vision. Yeah. So let's talk about concerts.
Okay.
Because I think this is so cool because, when you go to see a live show, there's so much more to it than that. Yeah. There's lights, there's, costumes or stage things. I love seeing old pictures of rock concerts. Yeah. And new ones, I guess. But and it's almost better than a documentary or a video sometimes because it's just like portrays,
moment in time.
Yeah, it portrays a lot. You can look around and people in the background and what's going on. And how did you like get into rock or whatever concert photography?
Yeah. Well, music's always been a huge part of my life. Growing up, music was just a big part in my family. My dad, my brother, and I are all musicians ourselves. Always music on in the house, lots of classic rock, that kind of thing. So I've always just loved shows. I've been going to shows since I was a teenager, and my happy place, being at shows. So there were certain rock photographers that I just loved their work, and I was feeling this pull toward photography, and also really admiring and being inspired by their concert work. And was I feel like I want to try this. I think I can do it, And I just, that setting for me feels really natural. And the sort of, I think being a fan, why I think my music photography resonates with some people and people like it is, I'm a fan first, right? I really try to put myself in the audience's shoes when I'm shooting. I shoot as a fan for the most part. That's my perspective. And, I think that's what I always try to capture is the special moments at shows that speak to the crowd, that the artist you can tell is really feeling, right? So it's all born out of that sort of fan experience. And, just sort of wanting to try it out, at the end of the day, being inspired and feeling this pull and
as a bonus,
trying to do it.
You get to attend all these shows.
Yes, that is a nice benefit for sure. It's a good perk. Yeah.
So what are some of the bands that you've shot?
Well, I shot a lot of bands.
I know.
I guess the ones that come to mind, Phish is a big one. I love them. Neil Young. I've shot. It's so many that it's hard for me to say. But just trying to think the ones that pop into my head as my favorite shows. Cage the Elephant, one of my favorite bands to shoot. Just the other night I shot Black Angels, Primus, Chicano Batman.
My Morning Jacket?
I have not shot My Morning Jacket
really?
yet, actually. I've shot Jim James. I have not shot My Morning Jacket. But it's on the list. Yeah. I need to cross that one off for sure. Yeah. So a lot of bands and a lot of different genres. The shooting for LA Record really got me out to so many shows. So many different genres. Everything from, singer-songwriter to hip hop to electronic. Like I just shot Zed's Dead recently. It's a big EDM show at the Shrine. That was a trip. But yeah, I like part of my, one of the things I love about it the most is the sort of indirect benefit of being able to get exposed to all these different scenes and genres and bands and artists that I have never heard of and would otherwise not really go to these shows. Yeah, like I was a house photographer at the Roxy for about a year and a half. And, the Roxy is this amazing historic venue. And they get all kinds of acts in there. And ones that are like sort of on the cusp, like artists that they're touring nationally, but they're not necessarily ready for like the big 1,000+ rooms, So it's a lot of these like up and comer style bands and artists. And I mean, that job really exposed me to like all different types of music, like hardcore punk, hip hop, pop, everything. And that has been almost the greatest reward of all of it, is like being able to see all these shows and like all of these incredible artists over the years.
Have you shot Khruangbin?
Yes. I just shot Khruangbin. I've shot them twice, but I just shot them at the Greek. They did a 3-night run here a couple weeks ago.
The Greek in LA.
The Greek in LA.
Yeah.
And yeah, I shot their first night of that run, and it was amazing. They're so fun to shoot.
Yeah, I can imagine, because it's like visually there's just a ton going on.
So much, yeah. And, the outfits, like Laura, the bass player, is just a vision. And, she really, the camera loves her. Mm-hmm. So it's a joy to shoot them for sure.
So I want to hear more. I mean, I try not to make this a Phish podcast, but it's
hard for us to not bring it in, right? Like
it's sort of always goes there, depending on who's on. But so I woke up whatever day that was a few weeks ago, the day of the Santa Barbara Bowl show, right? It's the end of October.
Yes.
And I see on Twitter or on Instagram or something, you're like, "Hey guys, I'm shooting the Phish show officially tonight."
Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, that's like the dream, right? So
the dream.
How did that come about?
Yeah. So I feel so lucky. But I've shot Phish for press like maybe 8 to 10 times. And I've shot for, Trey Anastasio band and done Mike Gordon band shows. And I've worked with other artists under the same management company. And so, I've made some connections, and Phish's team reached out to me asking if I, would be available to shoot the Santa Barbara show.
Is that an email?
It was an email. It was very kind, and someone had brought my name up a couple times, really trying to get me in there, and I owe that person so much gratitude.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it just came together. Like I was thought of, and
it's
asked.
Like one of those like preparation meeting. I forget what the saying is, but like you just were like the right person to call at that moment because of this past years of developing and honing your photography. And then it's like, there it was, it's like, it's just one of those perfect.
I got that email. It happened over the summer because they were like planning in advance, and so I held on to that for like a long time. Yeah. But I got that email, and I just like immediately like started crying, like hysterically crying out of joy and disbelief, because I was like, this is literally for the last 5 years, like the end vision, the goal, like at least the first goal, that kind of drove me. I mean, and it's not like this is the only thing I wanted to achieve, but it was definitely like, if this happens, that would be like absolutely,
of course,
mind-blowing. And, my main inspiration when I first started was Phish's road photographer, Renee Humer, who is absolutely the pinnacle, in my opinion, the North Star of, music photography, especially in the Phish, the greater jam scene. He really sets the bar, and I think the tone, and he's just an endless pool of creativity and skill.
Yeah.
And I got to work with him that night, which...
So were you like in the pit mostly, or were you moving around?
So I was in the pit for first 15 minutes with the other press photographers that night. And then I had the whole show from the entire venue to shoot as well.
One question I had about, and you might have insight into this, maybe not. During a Phish show, the Twitter account, the Instagram, they're putting photos out during the show.
Yes.
Immediately.
Yes.
Is the photographer editing any of those, or are they sending them to a middle person who's then sending it to the Twitter account? Like, what's the how's that turnaround possible?
So that is live during the show. Photographers are exporting, editing on their phone, sending it to, a person on the Phish team who is then posting that to social media.
Wow. Because they're always great pictures too. It's not like, oh, well, let's just get these out.
Right.
They're like crystal clear. You can see every band member's face.
Yeah.
They're like what would take me like weeks of choosing and editing.
It's pretty crazy. That was my first time doing that, but luckily like my gear allows me to be able to do that, like live sort of, export, edit, and send off.
Yeah.
So that was a new process for me during that show that I had to sort of like remember every 15 minutes, like go through your shots. What are the ones that stick out? Send them in.
Was that just like a whirlwind? Were you in the zone, or were you just like...
Yeah, I was very in the zone. I definitely was like hyper focused. It's a lot, right? Because you have to focus on, getting the shots, making them, interesting, good, the things that you think would resonate. Really just shooting what I think would be, what I like. And then, you have to like keep all of that in mind. Okay, this also has to like work on social and, all of that kind of stuff. So,
and you're like trying to enjoy the show a little bit, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, in that setting, in that instance where it's like I'm working with the band and I'm very, it's very a serious situation. Like I'm enjoying it's sort of like physically, I'm like feeling the music, but I'm not necessarily like mentally like. After that show, I was like, what did they even play? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, because I'm just so in the zone with the cameras.
Well, I forgot to mention one of the bands that you shot was my bluegrass band.
Yes.
The Wood and Steel.
Which was so fun.
Bluegrass band, which was cool.
Yeah.
And that's how I thought to contact you, was just seeing all your photographs.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's one of those kind of like, if you put this stuff out there, it will reach the people who it needs to reach. That's how the music thing works. I can't tell you how many opportunities came from being in a certain place at a certain time, maybe a year ago, maybe whatever, where it leads to these incredible opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in a city. I've thought about this a lot. I've been in LA for almost 14 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like, I can't imagine any other place, maybe New York, but it's such a unique place because these seemingly average jobs or gigs, a wedding,
right,
or a dinner or some kind of event. Occasionally in Los Angeles, it'll be like some very well-known person or people at an average job. Like I can't tell you how many times I've been just background music at a restaurant or at a wedding, and I'm just seeing so many people that I recognize and know. And that always turns, a lot of times that will turn into even cooler, even bigger opportunities.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I feel very fortunate in that sense to be in LA. A lot of people trash LA. It's such an easy thing to do, but I love it here.
Me too. I think it takes living here and, either finding or building or, being plugged into a community to really love it.
It took me about 10 years to really feel like I was an Angelino. Like I really lived it. Somewhere before that mark, I was like, well, I'm from Virginia. I moved here from Boston. I am, a transplant and all this sort of language.
Yeah.
And somewhere around 10 years, I was like, okay, I think I've earned,
your stripes here.
My spot here in town. And I just, I like it here. For anybody in the arts, it's like, just like we were talking about earlier, it's this sort of endless sea of other people who are passionate about their hobby. And I mean, I can't I don't think I could get that anywhere else, or at least not in the volume that exists here.
For sure.
What's next? Do you have any big shoots coming up?
Well, I just finished like a month and a half of a lot of shows.
Yeah, I mean, I could tell.
So
you were up and down, and
it's been an amazing couple months. Like some of the best months of my life. Like just been a dream. Like so many opportunities that have popped up, and it's been amazing. Like some of the biggest shows I've ever done, and it's been great. So. I should have a couple shows in December with Golden Voice because I shoot for them. And, Thanksgiving's coming up, holidays, like slows down. And then spring should like really pop. That's usually, it's like spring and fall. Then you've got festival season. Those are like the really busy seasons for shows in LA at least and festivals. So it should quiet down a little bit here the next like couple months, which I welcome.
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't, working or shooting any of these shows, but I made it to 10 Phish shows this year. And,
I got 13.
A lot of, that's the most I've seen in 1 year ever. Right. And I had a couple other trips that I took as a result of this sort of post-COVID or, whatever you want to call this 2021, where everybody made plans and there were tons of shows. Every band is on tour. And I got home from Vegas after Halloween and was just like, and I just like basically slept for a week. Yeah. And was ready for a little pause. Yeah, so it's nice that that's coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm excited to just kind of see where this all goes. Like, I think my approach to all of it has just been, put yourself out there, take the opportunities that feel right, push yourself to try new things. And that has worked out for me, and it's a mix of hard work, perseverance, help from other people too, and a little bit of luck, I think, at the same time. So I just want to keep doing it. That's my goal, is just keep doing it in a way that really makes sense for me. I think pre-pandemic, I was going like a million miles an hour, shooting 10 to 15 shows a month. And that was a lot. I think, like so many people during the COVID year and a half or so, like some of us have readjusted, like, our energy levels and what we're capable of and how much we really want to be doing outside, and whatever. And so I want to focus on like taking the right things and not just taking anything. And really, also like valuing myself and my work and making that a priority.
Yeah. You mentioned like, valuing your work. And I think that's a challenge for a lot of people who are artists of whatever style they are, is to put a price on it and to stick to it. And
yeah, it's hard.
That's a scary notion for a lot of people. It was for me for a long time. I felt like I can't charge people money to go play guitar at their thing. That's right. I felt weird about it for a long time, but then you sort of, once you've done that, it has the opposite effect of what I thought was going to happen. And my clients and people had more respect for me as a professional. Exactly. People want a professional when they have something done. People want somebody who charges money and is going to be, it's just more of a confident way to work. And then another happy result of that is I just got better. I just got better and better. Yeah. Because now it's what I do. Now it's my living, and now this is what I can really truly say is my full-time passion and business. So
that's amazing. I agree. Yeah, I think when you put that out there, you're met with the rewards of that, and it's just definitely a scary thing to do, and to know, okay, what is my price point? Like, how do I, because you want to be reasonable with the other sort of, I don't want to say competitors, but other options, but you also want to price yourself right, and it can definitely be a scary thing and something that takes time to iron out and figure out, and it's fine.
Well, Steph, thank you so much for coming on the show, talking about your photography.
Absolutely.
You're on Instagram
At Steph Port Photos,
okay,
which is STEPHPORT Photos.
I'll put that in the show notes. And congratulations again on an awesome season of photography.
Thank you so much.
So cool, the shows that you got to do, and I hope to see you again soon.
Thank you so much, Andy. It was a pleasure to be here.